little pen picture here. This is Gregory. Gregorius is his name, aka Gregory I the Great. Nationality Roman, dates circa 540 to 604, and Pope from 590 to 604. Appearance medium height and bearded. His face most becomingly prolonged with a certain rotundity, a dark complexion. In later life he suffered a lot of ill health. Before he was famous, a civil servant, imperial prefect in Rome, and a Benedictine monk. Famous for reorganising the papacy, sending a mission to Britain, the first monk to become a pope. Why does he matter? He reformed the church and brought administrative skill to the papacy. He set a template for the role of the pope in centuries to come. And could you have a drink with him down the pub? Yep, although he would probably give your drink away to the poor. Under new management. The only ancient account of Benedict is found in a 4-volume work written around 593. Its author was the next major figure in Western Christendom, Pope Gregory I, or as his fans call him, Gregory the Great. In 552, Justinian's forces had finally driven the Goths out of Italy, but their outstanding success, that's the official line of the press office of Justinian I, left the region utterly desolated. The Byzantine forces took over the capital at Ravenna, but were never really strong enough to gain much control. So, when the Goths left, a tribe called the Lombards, led by King Alboin, crossed the Alps and established themselves in the plain that today we still call Lombardy. They marched on Rome, and with no help forthcoming from the Byzantines, once again it was left to the Pope to rescue the city. Gregory, 540-604, was the son of a wealthy Roman family. At least one of his relatives had been a pope, his auntie Doris. No, my mistake, it was Felix III, that's 483 to 492. In 573, though, Gregory threw away his successful career as a prefect of Rome, turned the huge family palace on the Celian Hill into a Benedictine monastery, and became a monk himself. He also founded 6 more monasteries on family lands throughout Italy, and gave away the rest of the family fortune to the poor. Why? He thought the end was nigh. The world was growing old and hoary, hastening to its approaching death. What with the Goths, Justinian's army, and now the Lombards, Italy was a place of squalor, poverty, and disease. "Everywhere we see mourning," he wrote. "From all sides we hear lamentation. Cities are destroyed, military camps are overturned, fields are laid waste." Rome was abundantly afflicted with tremendous misfortunes. Might as well be a monk then. But after 3 happy years in the monastery, Gregory was headhunted and sent to Constantinople for 6 years as a kind of ambassador from the Western Church. He lived in the same palace that had been Vigilius's prison. He didn't enjoy himself, didn't like the Eastern Empire, and utterly refused to learn Greek, hated the food, moaned about the weather, etc., etc. After his allotted time in Constantinople, he returned to his monastery, but when the plague saw off Pope Pelagius I, no, not the heretic, it was obvious to everyone that the next pope should be Gregory. Well, I say obvious to everyone, except Gregory. He was so appalled at the prospect that he fled the city, hidden in a basket. But he was caught, returned to Rome, and in 590 became the first monk, and first of many basket cases, to be elected pope. Popes were elected at this time by 19 deacons who were in charge of Rome. Although they were occasionally referred to as cardinal, the title wasn't properly used until 100 years later. Rome was a city in crisis. The Lombards were looming. Rome was full of refugees who had fled from the advancing hordes, including 3,000 nuns. The nuns weren't part of the hordes. They were part of the refugees to keep up. The Byzantine official in charge of Ravenna was no help whatsoever. It was all up to Gregory. He raided the papal treasury to pay them off. But in 598, with no help forthcoming from the east, he negotiated a peace agreement with the Lombards himself. Then he set about the task of rebuilding Rome. Rome, as everyone knows, wasn't built in a day. More to the point, it wasn't built without paying the builders. Gregory didn't have much ready cash, but he did have a lot of land. The church was by far the largest landowner in the West, but a lot of the income from this land was siphoned off by local rulers and rich bishops. Gregory recognised the administration and ensured not only the collection of Gregory reorganized the administration and ensured not only the collection of rents but accurate accounts. He established, in fact, a rival to the imperial civil service. Bishops became responsible for keeping things straight in their cities. Gregory refers to them as rectors, from the Latin rectus, meaning straight, hence correct, rectify, and of course rectum, which comes from intestinum rectum, the straight intestine. You see, this is the stuff that other church histories don't give you. At heart, Gregory always remained a monk. He argued passionately that the wealth of the church belonged to the poor. Every day, 12 paupers joined him for dinner, but he also reformed church practices. He began the Roman Schola Cantorum, the progenitor of the modern cathedral choir school. The style of traditional plain song that developed in his time is still known as Gregorian chant. He was the first major preacher and teacher to systematically use non-scriptural religious anecdotes and stories to aid his sermons. What he was, in short, was the Roman Church's first great chief executive. He cracked down on the abuses of clerical power, including the sale of bishoprics. He banned clerical marriage, and his office manual, a book called Pastoral Care, remained the standard instruction manual for clergy for many centuries. Gregory was responsible for the 7 deadly sins. Not literally responsible, obviously. I mean, he invented the list. Or more properly, and fittingly, given his love of administration, he reorganized them into the final 7 we know today. It was the monk Evagrius of Pontus who first drew up a list of 8 evil thoughts. They were gluttony, lust, avarice, sadness, anger, acedia, from the Greek word meaning not to care, a kind of spiritual can't-be-askedness, vainglory, and pride. Evagrius ranked them in order of increasing severity. In the 590s, Gregory reorganized the list into 7. He combined vainglory and pride, and acedia and sadness, and brought in envy. So here's his list then: pride, envy, anger, sadness, avarice, gluttony, and lust. Later theologians replaced sadness with sloth, and in some cases, covetousness replaces avarice. The 8th deadly sin, playing your MP3 player too loudly in the train carriage, was put on hold until such a time as it became necessary. Gregory also put the idea of purgatory squarely at the heart of Catholic theology. Unheard of in the East, he made it part of official dogma, and with it the idea of getting time off in purgatory for doing penance. Again, his successors were to abuse this idea dreadfully. Gregory was truly an excellent leader, and if any pope deserves the epithet the Great, it would be him. Not that he would have enjoyed the title. He preferred to be known as the servant of the servants of the Lord. Talking of titles and self-aggrandizement, in 588, 2 years before Gregory became pope, the Patriarch of Constantinople decided to adopt the title of Ecumenical Patriarch. Actually, other prelates had used the title before, but no one had noticed. John IV was the first one to make a big thing about it. Ecumenical Patriarch, since ecumenical, as we've seen, means the whole church, the implication was clear. He was top of the popes. His name was John IV the Faster, which came from his habit of fasting, rather than his victories in the annual Eastern Patriarchs Half Marathon. Despite complaints from Western Church leaders, the title stuck, and to this day, the Eastern Orthodox leader is still the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople.